In other news today, the Minister of Defence, Thandi Modise, is in Moscow for a defence conference being hosted by the Russian government. 25 other countries are sending their defence ministers. 10 others are joining by a virtual video link. In a way, this may be seen as contentious. Our government has refused to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Last week, the International Relations Minister, Dr. Naledi Pandor, met with the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, during his trip here. They said the two countries disagreed on how to respond to the war in Ukraine. Professor David Monyae is the director of the Centre for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg. Professor Monyae, good afternoon to you. How do you read this? I don't think many people saw this coming.
Not at all, but I think this is consistent with South Africa's position, which is not taking sides with ongoing conflict, and are standing with the position of an independent foreign policy. And one would understand that she goes under that. And chances are very high that the invitation came way before the conflict itself in Ukraine. And therefore, I think South Africa is making it quite clear it's an independent state. It will take any conference that tries to bring peace and security in the world.
I mean, look, the issue of Russia's invasion of Ukraine can divide our society like other conflicts in the world do. People will have different views. It's the joy of being a democracy, I suppose. But is there an element of balance here, maybe? Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, came here. I presume we had invited him. I mean, he came, he wouldn't have come if he wasn't welcome. To balance that out, our defense minister sort of goes to Moscow. Is there an element of balance to these two things happening within a week of each other?
Or indeed, I think it plays quite well. And one won't be surprised if South African politicians also go to Europe or United States for any other important conference similar to this one. There has been a number of military exercise and talk of American military in South Africa. It's ongoing where South Africa plays its role from the African continent and put issues quite clear. However, there's also a golden opportunity in conference of this nature, in which South Africa would speak for itself and the continent on issues core to its interest and the continents, as well as try to mediate. These are golden opportunity and international relation to have access to President Putin and Minister of Defense in Russia.
I mean, I don't know if everyone in South Africa is going to see it like that. I think a lot of people, and I think people who sort of align themselves with the West, let me put it like that, are going to feel that this shows support to Russia. You won't see it like that.
Oh, last week it was the other way around. Those who are leaning toward the East, China, Russia, would have said South Africa is part of Washington establishment and the European Union. And I think South Africa will receive this kind of views from different positions. I think what is needed is to articulate South Africa's position. An important document came from DERCO about South Africa's national interest. I think this is a critical moment for the country and leadership to really explain to the population, the general people, to articulate South Africa's interest. What is South Africa's interest? Why is it important to go to Russia? Why is it important to meet Blinken and all other important players in the world politics?
Our government statement says that issues of mutual interest will be discussed, that our Minister Thandi Modise will meet with the Russian defense minister. How close are those defense links? I mean, as you point to, we've had exercises with the American military relatively recently. I remember a couple of years ago before the pandemic, I think a massive Russian bomber, and by massive, I mean massive, probably bigger than the buildings you and I are in at the moment, landed in Tshwane. What kind of mutual issues are they likely to be discussing? Is it possible to know?
Well, it's really hard to get the details, but a conference of this nature, I think what is discussed are core crises in the world and the discussions around issues of peacekeeping. Russia is playing an important role as a member of United Nations Security Council. Russia has a relationship with a number of African countries. as well as a dotted line to the African Union, like as the United States does, and Britain and Japan, and all other, including China. And therefore, I think those are kind of issues in terms of how to converge the interests of Russia as well as South Africa in dealing with those issues without really getting into what's happening in Ukraine, where South Africa is not involved.
How does the international diplomacy work? I mean, would the Americans have presumed that if Blinken were to be in Botswana one day, it's likely that we would also have some sort of link or meeting or something with the Russians the next day? I mean, they would have gamed this out, right?
Indeed. And it's really difficult for Americans to just talk in terms of their Africa strategy. It's difficult in the so-called new Cold War to preach about democracy and other issues and just keep quiet. I think United States need to walk the talk, having practical developmental issues. And a relationship is not just based on that we have same values. I think it goes beyond that. There are certain core interests that are equally important. So in this case, our norms and values, liberal democracy, might be much more closer to the United States than to Russia. But still, we have quite a lot of other important areas of collaboration with Russia.
There's certain things that Russia's involved in, has played a big role in Syria. I think South Africa, like so many other countries, is just, appalled by how long the conflict has gone on there. Neither side will sort of stop. We've also seen, it seems to me that in a way, South Africa may stand up and say to Russia, we want peace. I don't know if the Russians will be listening that much. They'll look to their core interests, as all countries do.
Oh, they will do. But the minister could also raise some of the concern that we might have with Russia. For instance, allegation of mercenaries in Central Africa or in Libya, where lots and lots of Russian armaments are being poured on the African continent. And I think we have to be as fair as we are with Westerners, where we disagree with them in terms of intervention in Libya in 2011 and other areas where we are not happy with their military bases on the African continent. We should equally raise those kind of issues with Russia in platforms like this in which the minister is attending.
Professor David Monyae, thank you so much, Director at the Centre for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg. Really interesting developments there.